Ethan stood inside the bustling lobby of the Riverstone Corporation, shifting nervously from one foot to the other. He had always wanted to be a part of a big company like this, with its gleaming glass walls and the hum of ambition in every corner. Today was his big interview for the marketing position. He could hardly breathe, the air felt thick with expectation. As he waited, he watched people glide past him dressed in sharp suits, each person seemingly on their way to greatness. Suddenly he spotted someone, a woman with striking features and an air of authority about her. She moved with confidence, her heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. He recognized her. Her name was Laura, and she was the VP of marketing. Ethan's heart raced. Big companies often had complex hierarchies, but he never thought he would come face to face with someone at her level. Gathering his courage, he decided to approach her. What could it hurt? "Excuse me," he said, trying to mask the tremble in his voice. She turned her gaze toward him, and for a split second her expression seemed to register surprise. "I'm sorry, but I'm in a bit of a rush," she replied, glancing at her watch. "You're Laura, right?" he pressed, attempting to hold her attention. She momentarily hesitated, but then became distracted by a buzzing phone in her pocket. With a slight nod, she brushed past him, her focus shifting away. Ethan felt a flash of disappointment as his question hung in the air, unacknowledged. What did he think would happen? It wasn't that easy to catch the eye of someone like her. He returned to the comfortable chaos of the lobby, his excitement dampened but not entirely extinguished. He thought about what he could do to impress the panel of interviewers. Memories of sleepless nights spent preparing for this day flooded back. He could picture himself confidently presenting his ideas, showcasing his passion for marketing. Time slipped by, and soon it was his turn. Ethan walked into the sleek conference room where 3 interviewers awaited him. He found himself seated under bright fluorescent lights, feeling exposed. With each question they asked, he tried to articulate his thoughts clearly, but the feeling of Laura's indifference lingered in his mind like a shadow. One of them asked. Ethan smiled, passion bubbling just beneath the surface. He took a deep breath, hoping they could sense his enthusiasm. Yet even as he spoke, a part of his mind felt somewhere else, wondering what impact it might have made if Laura had taken that moment to chat. As the interview wound down, his nerves eased, and he felt he had done well. Just as he thought he could escape, the panel exchanged glances full of unspoken words. "I think you did great, Ethan," one of the interviewers said, trying to reassure him. "But there's just one aspect we're wondering about." As he launched into his response, he noticed a commotion near the door. A crowd gathered, excitement palpable in the air. Rumors spread quickly throughout the lobby, and curiosity tugged at him. Who could cause such a stir? And then he spotted him, Daniel, the CEO of Riverstone. He was tall, handsome, and charismatic, the kind of man who commanded respect just by stepping into a room. Followed by a throng of employees, Daniel, with his confident demeanor, strode through the lobby like he owned the entire city. Ethan's eyes widened. Could this be a chance? He finished his explanation, but he felt his thoughts drifting toward the CEO now making his way upstairs for an important meeting. "Excuse me," Ethan asked the panel, his voice steadier than he felt. It was a question born more out of excitement than intent. At that moment, Laura re-entered the room, a stack of papers in her hands. She must have been involved in the meeting with Daniel. She paused, finally meeting his gaze. A flicker of something passed over her face, a mix of surprise and perhaps a hint of amusement. "He's inspiring," she replied, dismissively waving her hand, "but he's busy." Ethan's heart raced again, a mix of determination and dread. He thought about what that might mean. Why was he so eager to hear more about Daniel? What about Laura? But before he could ask anything further, Laura was swept away by a colleague. That quick interaction stirred something in him, a yearning to prove himself, to shine where opportunities presented themselves. As he concluded the interview, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the day wasn't over. What if he could still find a way to connect with Daniel, even for a moment? The idea filled him with both excitement and anxiety. After the panel said their goodbyes, he lingered in the lobby, watching as employees streamed past. Every few moments, Laura would reappear in his view, managing her impressive schedule, always on the move. Yet every time she passed, he felt a mix of frustration and desire to catch her attention, to impress her in some way. He took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of courage he had. Maybe creating a connection with Daniel somehow would lead to that. He could see the entire office energy shift as whispers of the CEO's greatness traveled through the air. Ethan knew one thing: he had to chase the chance. Summoning every bit of his confidence, he stepped toward the elevators where several employees were boarding. Just then he caught Laura again. She was standing by the elevator, engrossed in her phone. She glanced up, surprised but quickly neutral again. "Good luck with that," she said, but there was determination behind his voice. His surprise, Laura stopped, her gaze scrutinizing him. It wasn't pity, it was a flicker of interest. "Perhaps your attitude has potential." Just as she finished, the elevator doors opened and people began piling in. Ethan hesitated for a moment, heart pounding. "I'm not afraid of a challenge," he managed to say. To his disbelief, she nodded slowly, almost considering his words. "Then show me." With that, the moment was gone. She stepped onto the elevator, and just like that, she was gone. The adrenaline coursing through him was irresistible. He couldn't leave empty-handed. He felt a need to try. Taking a deep breath, he headed toward the staircase that led up to Daniel's office, a room few dared to enter without invitation. The stairs twisted upward in a long, narrow path, excitement intertwining with fear. Could he really just walk in? What if he got thrown out? But the thought of leaving without trying, without taking a risk, was unbearable. He climbed slowly, each step bringing the sound of his own heartbeat louder in his ears. Just as he reached the top, he spotted Daniel through the sparkling glass doors that led to his office. The handsome CEO was leaning over a table, talking animatedly. Heartbeat echoing in his chest, he stepped forward, bracing himself. He knocked on the glass. The CEO turned, eyebrows raised. For a moment, Ethan felt a wave of panic wash over him, but Daniel motioned for him to come in. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he stuttered as he entered. He could feel the eyes of the team in the office on him, studying him, assessing him. "I just wanted to say." Daniel paused, then looked him over thoughtfully. "Wow, that's brave." The room filled with softened chuckles. "I could help, bring something new," Ethan blurted out, courage bubbling up from somewhere deep. "Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes then," Daniel replied, leaning back in his chair. Ethan took a deep breath, voice steadying in the moment. He didn't know what the outcome would be, but he felt ready, empowered by the urgency of the chance he fought for. As he began, words pouring out, he realized that sometimes stepping into the unknown might be the most important leap of faith one could ever take. In a world where chances were precious, he knew he had to take them whenever they appeared. Ethan stood in the sleek lobby of Riverstone Corporation, power suits whirling around him like a vibrant storm. He could feel excitement mixed with the sweet sting of anxiety, the kind that made your heart race and your palms clammy. It was his opportunity, a moment that could launch his career into the stratosphere. He was about to interview for an entry-level marketing position at one of the most prestigious companies in the industry. As he waited, he spotted her. Laura, the VP of Marketing, walked through the lobby with an air of confidence that turned heads. Her tailored jacket hugged her frame perfectly, and each step she took was filled with purpose. Ethan couldn't help but admire her determination. It was the kind of drive he aspired to embody one day. Against the rhythm of the click-clack of heels on marble, he felt an odd pull to approach her, a whisper urging him to seize the moment. Before he could overthink it, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he stammered, his voice barely rising above the hum of conversation. "Are you Laura?" She paused for just a moment, her expression unreadable. "Yes, but I'm in a rush," she said, like a sudden gust of wind against a burning flame. With that, she brushed past him, leaving him standing there, his question dangling in the air like a half-finished puzzle. Ethan's heart sank, the disappointment settling in. He had hoped for a single moment of connection, maybe even a piece of advice, but now he was just another face in the crowded room. Shaking off the sting, he returned to his thoughts about the upcoming interview, remembering the countless rehearsals in front of his bedroom mirror, how he had imagined this very moment would feel. But as he walked into the conference room, where 3 interviewers awaited him, everything paled in comparison to the energy he had felt when Laura brushed him off. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for their questions. The bright lights hum above him, almost blinding. "Tell us about your strengths," one interviewer began, smiling. Ethan spoke about his keen understanding of digital marketing trends and his passion for creative storytelling. As he talked, his enthusiasm began to flow, and for a moment he felt the weight lift from his shoulders. But even as he spoke, a part of his mind replayed the moment with Laura. Why had she dismissed him so easily? The second interviewer asked, an encouraging smile on her face. Ethan hesitated for a moment, recalling how Laura had brushed off his presence. To his surprise, this question seemed to engage them. They spoke excitedly about teamwork and innovation, painting a vibrant picture of what it was like to work in Riverstone's prestigious halls. Just as he felt himself getting comfortable, the tension in the room shifted. Ethan noticed Laura standing off to the side, chatting with Daniel, the CEO. The room grew silent as he entered. Daniel was a legend in the industry, tall, suave, with an aura that commanded the entire space. You could almost feel the electricity leave his body when he moved. Ethan barely breathed as he watched Daniel lean in toward Laura, laughter lighting her features. Suddenly, it felt as if a spotlight had shifted onto him. All eyes were closely watching, but his gaze remained locked on Laura. Something in her expression shifted as she realized the attention on her had changed, glancing toward Ethan and then back at Daniel. "Excuse me," Ethan suddenly exclaimed, unable to hold back. His voice felt almost foreign to him, daring. Laura turned, a flicker of surprise registering for a moment before she replied, "Busy, always busy." Her words pierced through him, igniting a fire he didn't know he had within. But before he could respond, she was whisked away, leaving him feeling both invigorated and bewildered. The opportunity dripped from the ceiling like melting candle wax, and he was determined to shape it into something meaningful. As the interview wrapped up, Ethan felt a mix of satisfaction and frustration. He did well, they told him so, but he found himself preoccupied by the thought of Daniel upstairs. What if? The crowds in the bustling lobby felt more alive than ever, whispers of ambition lingering in the air. With a newfound determination, Ethan stood and glanced once more at the stairs leading to Daniel's office. Everything within him screamed to take that leap. Summoning his courage, he approached the staircase. The quiet hum of anticipation enveloped him as his shoes echoed with each step upward, heart racing with every footfall. He reached the top, glancing at the glass doors of the CEO's office. Just inside, he spotted Daniel animatedly discussing something with another executive. The walls of glass separated ambition from reality, but something inside him stirred. The risk loomed large, a daunting mountain. But then again, he had faced challenges before. As if propelled by forces beyond him, Ethan knocked on the glass. Daniel turned, eyebrows raised, surprised by the unexpected interruption. Ethan's heart thudded loudly, each beat echoing in his ears. Would he be dismissed like before? But Daniel smiled, an intriguing blend of amusement and curiosity. "Come in," he said, beckoning him inside. Ethan stepped over the threshold, the sleek office seeming to swallow him whole. People were seated around a large table, glancing at him, sizing him up. A perfect sea of sharp suits and professional smiles that made him feel like an outsider. "Sorry to intrude," he stammered, desperately searching for words that wouldn't come. Daniel asked, leaning back in his chair. There was both gentleness and authority in his tone, a compelling force that held Ethan's gaze. I just wanted to share some ideas for how Riverstone could enhance its brand visibility," he blurted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. The room became silent, all attention suddenly focused on him. The weight of their eyes bore down, and for a moment Ethan felt as if he might crumble under the pressure. But deep breaths steadied his nerves. This could be his moment, one he might never get again. "Okay," Daniel said, a spark of interest igniting in his eyes. Ethan's thoughts collided in a whirlwind, and somehow they began to align. He spoke about innovative social media strategies, data-driven marketing techniques, how storytelling could be powerful for the brand. The passion swelled as he presented his ideas, his confidence growing with each empowering word. Time seemed to slip away. He could see Daniel nodding, occasionally exchanging glances with the executives around him. They were engaged, intrigued. For a moment, Ethan felt invincible, like he was shaping the future right there. After he finished, Daniel leaned forward, intrigued. "Those are some bold ideas, Ethan." Ethan hesitated, caught in a delicate balance of confidence and fear. "But after everything, somehow strength surged within him. Because I believe in the power of a story. If I can connect with an audience, everything else follows." Daniel nodded, and the room seemed to hold its breath. "Interesting perspective. It's not often we hear such passion from a candidate," he replied, as an approving smile spread across his face. Ethan felt a sudden rush of relief and positivity. Daniel's attention felt monumental, like solid ground beneath him. He had taken a risk, challenged the norm, and in return he was being heard. Just then Laura stepped in, eyes widening when she saw Ethan standing confidently at the center of the room, a glint of surprise flashing in her eyes. The air shifted again, filled with anticipation. She asked, her tone curious, but a smile began to break through. Daniel gestured toward Ethan, and for the first time, Ethan felt like he had captured her interest. "He has some interesting ideas for the marketing strategy. I think we should consider bringing him on board," Daniel declared, the authority in his voice tangible. Laura looked surprised, and then her expression shifted to a smile, one of genuine respect. "I guess I underestimated you," she admitted, her voice softening. Suddenly there it was, the connection he had longed for earlier. Maybe it had taken an unexpected twist, but in that moment he felt he had proven himself in front of both Laura and Daniel. Ethan's heart swelled with excitement as he realized he was stepping into a future he had only dreamed possible. This was what ambition looked like, the drive to push through every no and fight for every chance. He had seized the moment, taking a bold leap into something unknown and making it his own. As the conversations resumed, Ethan felt a sense of belonging wash over him. He had fought against his fears and emerged stronger. Opportunities, he realized, didn't just drop into laps, they were created. And sometimes ignoring a question could lead to the most unexpected and rewarding answer. Ethan could hardly believe he was standing in the lobby of Riverstone Corporation, where ambition buzzed in the air like a swarm of bees. This was the big time. Glass walls shone under the bright lights, reflecting polished shoes and sharp suits. It was his dream to be part of a company like this, and today was his chance. Had prepared for months for this interview, today would define his future. As he looked around, his heart raced. The lobby was filled with professionals, each exuding confidence and purpose. He spotted her Laura, the VP of Marketing, whose reputation sparkled like a gem in the corporate world. She walked with poise, her expression fierce yet elegant. Just a few moments of her attention could change everything for someone like him. Eager to make a connection, Ethan felt an electric tingle of courage. Without thinking too much, he approached her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She stopped, glancing at him. There was an instant of recognition in her eyes, but then she glanced at her watch, her face shifting into a mask of polite disinterest. "Yes, but I'm really busy," she replied, brushing past him with barely a second thought. His heart plummeted. Why had he thought she would take even a moment to engage? All those late nights imagining how this day would go danced away like shadows in the bright lobby. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Was he even meant to be here? He shook himself, pushing the doubt aside like cobwebs. The interview panel awaited him inside, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. As he entered the conference room, the buzz of anxiety surged anew, nearly drowning out his thoughts. The room was bright, filled with eager faces ready to assess him. "Welcome, Ethan," one of the interviewers said with a warm smile. They began their questions, his pulse quickening with each one, but he focused on showcasing his skills. The more he spoke, the more he tapped into his passion. He could see flickers of interest on their faces, and with each response, he felt more at ease. Another interviewer asked, leaning forward, interested. Ethan launched into his ideas, explaining how he planned to leverage current trends and develop innovative campaigns that resonated with their audience. Words flowed naturally, filling the space with energy. Just as he finished, a ripple of tension swept through the room, drawing everyone's attention. There he was, Daniel, the CEO. He entered the room with the kind of presence that made your heart skip a beat. A commanding figure, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he radiated authority. Ethan's eyes widened as the energy shifted. Conversations hushed as all heads turned. Daniel exchanged a few words with the panel, then turned his gaze toward Ethan. He asked, his tone direct, almost challenging. Ethan's confidence wavered like smoke caught in a sudden gust. He had researched Daniel, watching countless interviews and reading articles, but now facing him, his mind felt blank. He started, hesitating as the silence stretched. The room filled with a stillness that felt almost tangible. Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued, but just as quickly turned his attention back to the interview panel, dismissing Ethan's words without a second thought. The heaviness settled in again. Ethan felt that familiar mix of determination and doubt. Despite the initial connection, Daniel's indifferent body language felt like a brick wall. His question had hovered in the air, unanswered, just like Laura's dismissal from before. But there was no time to dwell, he needed to focus. As the interview concluded, Ethan felt a mixture of hope and frustration. He had done well, but a part of him remained unfulfilled, still searching for the acknowledgement that had eluded him earlier. After the interview ended, he wandered into the lobby, the familiar buzz swirling around him. But this time, he looked for the stairs leading to Daniel's office. What if he could still make an impression? What if he could get even one moment of attention from someone who was untouchable to him just a few moments ago? With a deep breath, Ethan took the first step, then the next, each one echoing slightly in the empty stairwell. As he neared the top, he thought about how many others would never make this climb, never take that leap. He was determined not to be one of them. Peeking through the glass doors, he saw Daniel engaged in conversation with a few executives, laughter echoing in the air. A sudden wave of uncertainty washed over him. Was this a mistake? Then he remembered Laura's words. If he wanted to capture Daniel's attention, he needed to fight for it. His heart raced as he knocked on the glass door, each tap reverberating through him like a thunderclap. Daniel turned, surprise flickering in his eyes before it morphed into curiosity. "Come in," he said, inviting Ethan with a nod. The mix of fear and excitement rushed through him. He had crossed a threshold that felt monumental. Stepping inside felt like stepping onto a stage. Several executives turned to look at him, their gazes penetrating. Ethan's throat went dry as Daniel leaned back, eyes fixed on him. Hi, I'm Ethan," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "All right, go ahead." Ethan's stomach flipped. This was a chance he couldn't squander. He took a breath and let the words flow. He talked about strategies across digital platforms, suggesting targeted campaigns that could reach untapped segments. He felt the energy in the room shift. Daniel leaned forward, listening intently, his focus sharp. Time seemed to evaporate around him as he continued to share his insights. With each idea he presented, he felt a growing confidence rise within him. The executives exchanged glances that mirrored growing approval, and for the first time since he entered the building, Ethan felt seen. Finally, he transitioned into how storytelling would be vital for connecting with their audience. People want to feel something. When a brand resonates emotionally, that's when it truly connects with its customers, he emphasized, his voice steady and bold. As he finished his presentation, Daniel nodded slowly, and the room fell into an easy silence. "Interesting perspective," he said. "You clearly have fire in you, but what about execution?" This was a question Ethan had anticipated. "I think execution lies in collaboration. By tapping into the strengths of diverse teams, we can achieve projects that are not only ambitious but also practical." Daniel smiled. There was something magnetic about it that made Ethan's heart swell. "You've thought this through." Then they heard a light knock at the door. Laura stepped inside, her expression suddenly surprised as she saw Ethan standing confidently at the epicenter of the conversation. She asked, her tone infused with genuine curiosity. Daniel leaned back in his chair, gesturing at Ethan. "He's been sharing some ideas worth considering for our next campaign," he replied, the pride in his voice unmistakable. Laura's eyebrows lifted in surprise, a flicker of respect flashing across her features. Ethan turned to her, feeling that familiar spark from before, but this time it wasn't disappointment, it was acknowledgement. "Thank you," he replied, his voice gaining strength. Daniel stood, motioning toward the door. "Ethan, I like what you're bringing to the table. Ethan felt a rush of exhilaration wash over him. His efforts had led him here, standing in front of the leaders of Riverstone. He nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. As he exited the office, a sense of triumph filled him, buoying his steps. He had fought for his moment, pushed through uncertainty, and found the courage to speak up when it mattered most. Standing in the lobby again, Ethan allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. It was wild to think how a simple question, once ignored, had turned into an invitation upstairs, an opportunity that could change everything. And in that instant, Ethan knew, sometimes the most valuable moments in life come from taking risks, daring to step beyond the familiar, and seizing the chance to create your own narrative. Ethan stood in the lobby of Riverstone Corporation, his heart racing in tune with the hustle of the busy crowd. He had dreamed of this day for months, and now, the weight of the moment pressed against his chest like an anvil. Today was the day he would interview for a marketing position in one of the most prestigious companies in the industry. The high ceilings arched above him, filled with lights that twinkled like stars against the polished glass. People scuttled past him, brimming with purpose and confidence, and in that sea of ambition he felt small. But there was a flicker of determination in him. He had come too far to let self-doubt creep in. His eyes scanned the room, landing on a striking figure, Laura, the VP of Marketing. She commanded the space with her confident strides and sharp attire, her presence as electric as a live wire. He had read about her in industry articles and admired her campaigns from afar. In that moment, he knew he needed to connect with her somehow. A simple question might open doors for him. Summoning all his courage, Ethan took a step forward. "Excuse me," he said, barely above a whisper. She turned, her bright eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. "Yes, but I'm really busy," she replied, her voice cool and dismissive, completely turning away from him as she hurried past, phone already raised to her ear. Ethan felt a wave of disappointment crash over him. Just like that, his moment vanished. She hadn't even given him a chance to introduce himself. All those hours he practiced how he would present himself, all for this, an ignored question. He felt the sting of embarrassment, the kind that crawled under your skin and burned. In the back of his mind, he knew he had a choice. He could let it defeat him, or he could use that moment as fuel for what lay ahead. He had come too far to allow self-doubt to win. Shaking off the rejection, he was ushered into the conference room for his interview. The three interviewers sat like judges, watching. He took a deep breath, bringing back the focus he had prepared for. "Welcome, Ethan," one of them prompted. Here we go, he thought. This was his time. He dove into his passion for digital marketing, how he could harness creativity in campaigns, and the importance of connecting stories to audiences. As he spoke, the rhythm of his words flowed with confidence. Yet somewhere in that flow, his mind drifted. He couldn't shake the feeling of being brushed aside by Laura. Why had she ignored him? Perhaps it was a sign. Maybe he didn't belong here after all. But he quickly scolded himself. This was not the time for doubt. So he pressed on, speaking passionately about his ideas and illustrating how they could benefit Riverstone's brand. The energy shifted as he saw glimmers of interest in their eyes. Then came the pivotal moment. One of the interviewers asked. Ethan hesitated. He thought of asking for specifics about the job, but his instincts nudged him in a different direction. He asked. As the interviewers began to respond, the room fell silent as Daniel entered. The CEO walked with an undeniable air of authority, each step echoing along with the heartbeat of the room. He was tall, charismatic, with an aura that drew instant attention. Conversations hushed, and Ethan felt every pair of eyes turned toward the formidable leader. "Good to see everyone's energy," Daniel said, surveying the room. Then his gaze fell on Ethan. "I'm Ethan," he said, trying to hold his ground. Daniel nodded, intrigued. His tone was direct, a challenge resting beneath the surface. Suddenly, everything Ethan practiced slipped from his mind. The weight of Daniel's presence felt heavier than mountain stone. He tried to find his words but faltered, heat creeping up his neck. "I believe," he started, but then fell silent, doubts swirling like a tempest in his mind. Before he could finish, Laura stepped into the room again, catching his eye for just a moment. "Ethan," she said, a hint of surprise lingering in her voice. But then, as quickly as she acknowledged him, she turned back to Daniel like she had forgotten he ever spoke. And just like that, Ethan's question faded into the background, ignored. The interview ended soon after, and as Ethan walked out of the conference room, something inside him simmered anger mixed with determination. He was tired of being overlooked, tired of letting opportunities slip from his grasp. What would it take to be heard? What would it mean to break through this invisible wall? He watched the steady flow of people in the lobby, each one with their own ambitions, their own stories waiting to be told. Just then he spotted a staircase leading up to Daniel's office. An idea struck him. What if he could speak to Daniel directly? What if he could push through the noise, get a moment of his time? His heart raced with both fear and a wild sense of determination. This might be his only chance. He took a deep breath and began his ascent. Each step felt like an act of courage, pushing away the worry that gripped him. When he reached the top, he hesitated briefly, peering through the glass doors to the CEO's office. Daniel was engaged in discussions with several people, animated and full of charisma. It was a dazzling scene, a glimpse into a world he wanted to be a part of. Suddenly, he knocked on the glass. The moment his knuckles made contact, he felt a rush of adrenaline. Daniel glanced up, eyebrows raised in surprise, then motioned for him to enter. Ethan stepped inside, feeling like he wielded a sword of courage amid a battlefield of suits. The room filled with silence as everyone turned to him, and he felt the power of their gazes, assessing, questioning. Daniel leaned back, his expression curious. Ethan's voice faltered momentarily, caught in the throes of nerves, but he pushed through. "I just wanted to share some ideas I have," he said, hesitating but determined. There was a spark of amusement in Daniel's eyes. "Go ahead," he said, motions inviting Ethan to continue. The moment felt surreal, but he gathered his thoughts and began to speak. His passion poured forth. He described innovative strategies, fresh concepts, and how storytelling could redefine Riverstone's connection to its audience. The more he spoke, the more energy surged through him. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as Daniel and the other executives listened, absorbed. You could see it happening in real time. Ethan was capturing their attention, painting a picture of what could be. "Interesting approach," Daniel said when Ethan finished, nodding appreciatively. Taking a deep breath, Ethan searched for confidence. "Because I believe that collaboration is the key," he articulated clearly. "Bringing together unique perspectives within a team can lead to groundbreaking ideas." Daniel smiled, a genuine smile that lit up the room. It was a validation, a flicker of hope. "I like that," he replied thoughtfully. "We need someone who can not just think, but also connect with others. You've got spunk, Ethan." Just then, Laura entered the office again, her expression shifting from surprise to intrigue. She clearly hadn't expected Ethan to be there, holding the CEO's attention. She inquired, and Daniel gestured to Ethan, who stood tall, filled with renewed vigor. "I'm hearing some impressive ideas from our candidate," Daniel said, a hint of pride in his voice. Laura's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time she looked at Ethan with recognition. "You've made quite an impression," she admitted, a subtle smile breaking through her usually polished demeanor. Ethan felt every ounce of doubt he carried earlier dissipate in that moment. He wasn't just a face in the crowd anymore. He was a force, a voice that demanded attention. As he left the CEO's office, the feeling of triumph swelled within him. He had carved out a moment, pushed through challenges, and turned what could have been a mere footnote into a headline moment in his story. Standing in the lobby once more, Ethan looked around, feeling an undeniable shift in himself. He had dared to step outside the shadows and take the leap. Opportunities, he realized, weren't just handed out, they were fought for and earned, created through courage and determination. In that vibrant lobby, filled with people on their own journeys, Ethan understood a fundamental truth. When you feel ignored, when your voice seems lost in the crowd, sometimes all it takes is one moment of boldness to rewrite your story. Ethan stood in the sleek, glass-walled lobby of Riverstone Corporation, an electric charge coursing through him. Today was his big moment, the culmination of weeks filled with anticipation and sleepless nights. He was about to interview for a marketing position in a company that seemed like a giant in the corporate world, a place where dreams could be made or shattered. As he waited, he could feel the pulse of ambition all around him. Dressed in a tailored suit, he couldn't help but notice others gliding through the lobby, executives, associates, each person with their own story and purpose. Amidst this whirlwind of professionalism, his eyes caught sight of her, Laura, the VP of Marketing, a revered icon in her field. She was the kind of person who made waves, turning heads and commanding attention. With a surge of determination, Ethan decided to approach her. After all, a simple hello could lead to something incredible. He straightened his tie and took a deep breath, stepping into her line of sight. He asked, his heart racing. She turned momentarily, briefly locking eyes with him, yet it was as if she had already dismissed him. "Yes," she replied, only glancing at her watch. "But I'm really busy," she added, her tone clipped as she swiftly moved past him. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. It was devastating in its simplicity. He had imagined this moment for so long and had hoped for a spark of connection. But she brushed right past him, leaving his question hanging unanswered. He stood there, disappointment washing over him like a cold wave. Shaking off the feeling, he collected himself and mentally prepared for the interview ahead. There was no time for self-doubt. He had come too far to relinquish his dream. With every step toward the conference room, he forced himself to focus, reminding himself of the passion and ideas he had carefully crafted. The moment he entered the conference room, however, his heart returned to his throat. 3 panelists sat across a sleek table, and their eyes studied him like hawks. A wave of anxiety crashed over him, but he stood tall, reminding himself that he belonged here. "Welcome, Ethan," one of the interviewers said, an amiable smile masking the seriousness of the moment. With renewed resolve, Ethan spoke passionately about his love for storytelling and marketing, how he believed in connecting brands with consumers on a deeper level. He recited his thoughts fluidly, painting a vivid picture of what he could bring to Riverstone. But even as he spoke, his mind couldn't shake the encounter with Laura. Had he already failed, anxiety flared again, but he pressed on, letting the words flow, fueled by his ambition. Then came the moment he had anticipated. One of the panelists inquired. The question hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Ethan took a deep breath and decided to break the ice by showing a genuine interest in the company. he asked, hoping to make a lasting impression. Before the panel could respond, a sudden hush swept through the room. The CEO had arrived. Daniel entered with an unmistakable aura of authority, his presence radiating confidence. Conversations halted as heads turned, all eyes on the man whose name had appeared in countless business articles. Ethan's heart raced. The moment felt monumental. He was standing in the same room as a legend. Daniel scanned the group, and for a fleeting moment, his gaze landed on Ethan. Daniel asked, his voice commanding and warm all at once. "I'm Ethan," he managed, trying to maintain composure. "I just interviewed for the marketing position." Daniel smiled, nodding appreciatively. He inquired, an intensity in his gaze that sparked both excitement and fear in Ethan's chest. Ethan opened his mouth, prepared to articulate his ideas, but a wave of panic crashed over him. He felt exposed, vulnerable. Instead, his words stumbled. Before he could fully formulate his thought, Daniel turned back to the panel, almost as if Ethan had become another face in the crowd. The moment slipped away, and Ethan felt the weight of disappointment settle again. The interview continued, but every question felt like another nail in the coffin of his hopes. Soon it came to an end, leaving him feeling uneasy. He caught glimpses of curiosity in the panel's eyes, but he also sensed judgment ringing in the silence that followed. As he walked out of the conference room, Ethan felt a whirlwind of emotions. Hope clashed with frustration, and a sense of defeat lingered at the edge of his mind. He was leaving the building, head hung low, when something caught his attention, the staircase leading to Daniel's office. What if he took a chance? He could feel the pull of possibility surging through him. Others might step back, afraid to confront uncertainty, but Ethan had spent too long dreaming of this moment to let it pass. He took a deep breath and began ascending the stairs. With each step, he felt the weight of the world resting on his shoulders, but it also felt exhilarating. This could be his opportunity to break through those barriers he felt were keeping him from success. Arriving at the top, he peered through the glass doors into the CEO's office. Daniel was engaged, animatedly discussing something with his team. It was a snapshot of brilliance, a leader at work. The scene was mesmerizing, a glimpse into a world Ethan yearned to join. As if fueled by sheer determination, he knocked on the glass door. The moment his knuckles tapped against the surface felt monumental. All eyes turned to him, and Daniel looked up, surprise flickering in his expression. "Come in," he called out, the invitation ringing like a siren song. Heart racing, Ethan stepped inside, ready to seize the moment. The energy in the room shifted. No longer was he a mere candidate, he was now an intruder in an extraordinary space, but he had the fire to justify his presence. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "Go ahead," Daniel encouraged, leaning forward as if intrigued. Ethan found his footing, a rush of adrenaline soaring through him. He spoke passionately about innovative methods to engage consumers, connecting with their emotions through storytelling. The more he spoke, the more alive he felt. The room absorbed his words, and he could sense a keen interest peaking among the executives. He detailed tactics for enhancing their digital presence, exploring opportunities in social media with ideas that mixed creativity and strategy. The excitement in the room was palpable, a crackle of potential that surged through him like electricity. When he finished, Daniel leaned back thoughtfully, assessing him. "Interesting," the CEO said, nodding. In that moment, Ethan realized this was his chance to shine. He had already taken a leap, and now he had to land on solid ground. "I believe in the power of collaboration. By harnessing diverse perspectives within a team, we can turn bold ideas into effective strategies." Daniel's eyes lit up. "I like your attitude." Just then, Laura entered the office again, a surprised expression painting her face as she caught sight of Ethan confidently discussing ideas with the CEO. She seemed a heartbeat away from full acknowledgement, her posture shifting slightly. "Ethan, I didn't realize you were in here with Daniel," she said, her tone shifting from inquisitive to impressed. "I was just sharing some ideas with Daniel," he replied, trying to maintain his composure, a slight thrill running through him. Daniel smiled approvingly. "He's promising." Ethan felt the weight of that statement settle over him like a blessing. In moments, everything shifted. The doubt that had plagued him just hours before felt distant, replaced by a new surge of hope and determination. From the corner of his eye, he caught Laura's gaze. This time it held not just curiosity, but a spark of respect. "Color me impressed," she admitted, her voice softer, more genuine than before. As the conversations resumed and Daniel laid out next steps, Ethan felt a wave of triumph wash over him. He had risen from the shadows of obscurity and made a mark. The moment seemed surreal, but also achingly familiar, like a turning point he had long envisioned. As he left the office, buoyed by a sense of accomplishment, he couldn't help but marvel at the transformation of his day. What had started with rejection had evolved into an opportunity he never could have foreseen. In that vibrant lobby, bustling with energy and ambition, Ethan understood. Every ignored question, every moment of dismissal had only fueled his drive to prove himself. Sometimes the most powerful experiences come from stepping into the unknown and confronting fear head-on. As he pushed through the glass doors and into the evening light, Ethan felt a quiet resolve settle within him. He was ready for whatever came next. Opportunities weren't just given, they were earned through courage and tenacity, and he was just getting started. Ethan stood nervously in the expansive lobby of Riverstone Corporation, the energy around him crackling like electricity. He had always dreamed of this moment, the chance to land a job at a company famed for its innovative marketing strategies. Today was the day of his big interview, and everything felt surreal. He took a deep breath, glancing around the room filled with sharply dressed professionals, each one moving with a purpose that seemed miles beyond his own. The atmosphere was intoxicating, and yet it filled him with doubt. His confidence wavered as he noticed Laura, the VP of Marketing, gliding through the lobby. She was known for her brilliant ideas and cutthroat efficiency, someone he had admired from afar. Heart-pounding, Ethan knew he had to seize this moment. This was his chance to make an impression. He took a step forward, summoning the courage that had been rehearsed in front of his bathroom mirror countless times. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice quaking slightly. She turned her head, and for a brief moment her eyes met his, but almost instantly her gaze shifted to her phone as it buzzed in her hand. "Yes, but I'm quite busy," she replied, offering a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. In the blink of an eye, she walked away, leaving Ethan standing there, a wave of humiliation washing over him. In that moment, his heart sank. He felt a mix of embarrassment and disappointment, like a balloon slowly losing air. Did he really expect her to drop everything for him? He had tried to express interest, but it seemed irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, a footnote in the rush of corporate life. Steeling himself, he pushed the feeling aside. He was here for an interview, and he couldn't afford to dwell on that interaction. He would show them he was capable, that he belonged here. As he entered the conference room, the bright lights felt almost blinding. He was facing 3 interviewers seated at a polished table, their expressions scrutinizing. Ethan took a deep breath, reminding himself of the passion that had brought him to this moment. "Welcome, Ethan," one of them said, flashing a friendly smile. With that simple prompt, Ethan launched into it. He spoke about his background in marketing, highlighting his knack for storytelling and how it connected consumers to brands on a deeper level. Each word rolled off his tongue with increasing confidence, igniting a spark he had thought flickered out with Laura's dismissal. But as he talked, his mind occasionally drifted back to that brief encounter and the doubt it stirred within him. Was he capable enough to stand out in this corporate world? Would anyone really care about his ideas? Ethan's pulse quickened. This was the moment for him to shine again. He asked, thinking he could share something meaningful, but then right as he finished the question, a hush fell over the room. Daniel, the CEO, walked in, and the air shifted as if a powerful wind had just blown through. Daniel was a towering figure, celebrated in the industry. His presence commanded respect, and he strode in as if the world had paused to listen. All eyes turned, including Ethan's. This man was the embodiment of success, and here he was just a few feet away. Daniel scanned the room, and Ethan felt the intensity of his gaze. Daniel asked, his voice rich and warm like a favorite song. "I'm Ethan," he stuttered, startling himself. Daniel nodded, his curiosity evident. It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge thrown down before him. Ethan opened his mouth, ready to share all the ideas swirling in his head, but in that instant, panic surged through him. The moment felt monumental, like standing on the edge of a cliff. "I believe storytelling is essential to connect with audiences, creating campaigns that resonate on a personal level," he managed to say. Daniel's attention shifted as if he had been caught up in a wave and suddenly set adrift. He turned back to the panel, almost dismissing Ethan's words. The whirlwind of excitement came crashing down, leaving only disappointment in its wake. As the interview continued, Ethan felt that the sharp focus had shifted, leaving him feeling sidelined. Even as he wrapped up his observations and answered the panel's questions, the energy in the room felt stifling. Finally, the interview concluded, but as Ethan walked out, he couldn't shake the feeling of having missed something vital. He sensed that while his ideas had been appreciated, he hadn't made the lasting impression he had hoped for. Still, he could sense energy weaving through the busy lobby. Curiosity flickered like a match in his gut. He glanced toward the staircase leading to Daniel's office, a visual threshold that could connect dreams to reality. What if he dared to take that leap? What if he climbed those stairs and made his case directly to the CEO? That thrill coursed through him, pushing back anxiety. He shook his head at the thought of staying stagnant. No more being overlooked, he felt the urge to break free. As he ascended the stairs, each step felt like an act of defiance against his earlier disappointments. He reached the top, heart pounding like a drumbeat of resolve in his chest. Peering through glass doors, he caught sight of Daniel and several other executives deep in discussion. Ethan felt both exhilarated and terrified. Did he really have the right to interrupt their important conversations? But this was his opportunity, and he couldn't let fear steer him away. Summoning every bit of courage, he knocked on the glass door. The sound reverberated through the room. Daniel turned, surprise flickering across his face, then motioned for Ethan to enter. The moment felt surreal. "Come in," Daniel said, his tone inviting yet commanding. Ethan stepped into the office, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on him. The executives were now focused entirely on him, a bright spotlight illuminating his vulnerability, but also his determination. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he said, his heart racing. Daniel leaned forward in his chair, his curiosity piqued. Words began to tumble out. Ethan spoke about leveraging social media to engage consumers more deeply, about crafting narratives that drew people in. He detailed specific campaigns he envisioned, describing how they could resonate emotionally with audiences. Each idea felt like a key unlocking doors to potential. As the minutes passed, Ethan could see Daniel nodding, a slight smile creeping onto his face. The atmosphere shifted subtly. It was no longer just an impromptu pitch. It became an exchange of ideas, a conversation ignited by mutual excitement. When he finished, a mixture of adrenaline and anticipation coursed through him. Daniel's scrutinizing gaze was almost tangible. "Interesting approach," he said, considering Ethan's proposals seriously. "But what makes you think you can execute this?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. "Because I thrive on collaboration. By creating a team that fosters diverse perspectives, we can take bold ideas and make them a reality." Daniel's eyes sparkled, the corners of his mouth lifting in approval. "That's a valuable perspective. I appreciate your passion and willingness to work hard." Just then, Laura stepped into the office, her expression shifting from surprise to intrigue as she took in the scene. It was like watching a light bulb flicker on. She asked, looking between Ethan and Daniel. Ethan's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and tension. Daniel gestured toward him. The acknowledgement felt like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Laura seemed momentarily caught off guard before her expression softened. "Impressive, Ethan," she said, a hint of respect mingling with her surprise. Ethan could hardly believe it. What had started as a day laced with uncertainty had morphed into an opportunity he had labored to create. He had turned rejection into acceptance through sheer will. As he exited the office, exhilaration surged through him. The hallway felt alive, pulsing with possibilities. He had stepped out of the shadows and claimed his place not just as a candidate, but as someone with potential. The lobby buzzed around him as he collected his thoughts, still riding the high of the interaction. He had dared to confront the challenges he faced and had come out stronger. Ethan felt a newfound sense of power around him, invigorated by the sense that he could shape his own destiny. Other candidates might fall silent, but he had learned that taking risks opened doors. The experience reiterated a lesson he'd heard time and time again, that the path to success is often littered with setbacks. Each moment of dismissal, the brush-off from Laura, the initial uncertainty with Daniel had only added fuel to his ambition. Standing there, surrounded by the pulse of ambition in that vibrant lobby, Ethan knew he had forged a new path. Opportunities weren't merely handed out, they were earned through tenacity and courage. And as he took a moment to breathe it all in, he felt certain of one thing: this was just the beginning. The world was wide open, glowing with potential, and he was ready to seize it. Ethan stood outside the entrance of Riverstone Corporation, his heart racing with anticipation. This was it, the moment he had meticulously prepared for over the past several months. Today was the day he would interview for a marketing position with a company known for its innovation and leadership in the industry. As he stepped into the grand lobby, the energy around him was palpable. The space was filled with the sound of polished shoes clicking on marble floors and the hum of conversation, an orchestra of ambition and drive. He watched confidently dressed professionals rushing past, caught up in their own worlds, each one a testament to success. Feeling the weight of his own nervousness, he took a deep breath and straightened his tie, and then he saw her. Laura, the VP of Marketing, was navigating through the crowd like a ship slicing through water. Her reputation was legendary. She had spearheaded campaigns that had transformed brands and captured the hearts of millions. Ethan admired her not just for her skill, but for the sheer power she seemed to radiate. Suddenly, an urge sparked within him to approach her. How often would he have a chance to connect with someone like her? Summoning every ounce of courage, he took a step forward. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. She turned, and for a brief moment their eyes locked, a flicker of recognition surfacing. But just as quickly she glanced down at her phone, clearly distracted. "Yes, but I'm very busy," she said, her tone curt as she hurried past him, ignoring his question completely. His heart plummeted. Just like that, the excitement that had surged within him moments ago dissipated into a hollow ache. It was as if a burst of confidence had been punctured. A wave of self-doubt washed over him. Was he foolish for thinking he could ever stand out in a world like this? But he couldn't allow himself to dwell on that disappointment. He was here to prove himself, to show what he could bring to Riverstone. So with that purpose in mind, he pushed through the feelings of rejection and made his way into the conference room for his interview. As he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. 3 interviewers sat at the long, sleek table, their eyes scanning him with a mix of expectation and scrutiny. The room felt colder, brighter, as if he had entered into a whole different realm. "Welcome, Ethan," one of the interviewers asked with a friendly smile that seemed designed to put him at ease. Ethan cleared his throat as he prepared to speak. "I believe my greatest strength is my ability to connect stories to brands." He found a rhythm as he spoke, diving into examples of campaigns he had created during his internships. Their faces softened slightly, and for a moment he felt the spark of interest. But even as he articulated his points, he couldn't shake the feeling of being brushed aside by Laura. She was the kind of person whose endorsement could change a career, and he had been ignored. Would this interview even matter? The panel asked him questions, and he did his best to respond confidently, yet part of his mind drifted back to that interaction in the lobby. In that moment, Ethan felt a jolt of opportunity surge through him. This was his chance to show he was genuinely interested in the company. He asked, hoping to navigate the conversation away from his lingering self-doubt. But just then, the door swung open, and in walked Daniel, the CEO of Riverstone. The atmosphere shifted again like a weighty storm cloud parting to reveal brilliant sunshine. Daniel commanded the space, his tall frame exuding confidence. "Good to see everyone," he said, a warm smile anchoring the power of his presence. His gaze swept the room, resting on Ethan. "I'm Ethan," he said, somehow managing to sound calm amidst a swirling storm of nerves. "Ethan," Daniel said thoughtfully, clearly interested. The moment felt surreal. Ethan felt as if he were standing on the edge of a diving board, poised to leap into the deep end. "I believe storytelling is the key to engaging audiences," he replied, gathering his thoughts quickly. Daniel nodded, the hint of a smile playing at his lips, but then just like that, he turned back to the panel, refocusing on their conversations, leaving Ethan feeling once again like a forgotten footnote. Even as the interview concluded, the feeling of rejection pooled heavily in his chest. But it mixed with a spark of defiance. He couldn't let that one interaction define him. After all, who was he if not someone who fought for what he wanted? After a few minutes of small talk with the panel, he stood up to leave. But before he stepped out, he looked back toward the staircase leading to Daniel's office. What if he could go upstairs? What if he seized this moment to speak directly to the CEO? His heart raced as thoughts swirled in his mind. The way people seemed to dismiss him reminded him of earlier days when he'd been too cautious, too scared to step out of his comfort zone. But this was different. This was a defining moment. As he approached the staircase, he took a deep breath, allowing determination to propel him forward. Each step felt heavier and lighter all at once. What was up there? What opportunity awaited him? When he reached the top, Ethan peered through the glass door into Daniel's office. There he was again, a commanding presence, immersed in conversation with fellow executives. It struck Ethan how close he was to someone who had the power to shape futures. In that moment, Ethan summoned all the courage he could muster. He knocked on the glass door with a hand that trembled slightly. Daniel turned, surprise flickering through his expression before transforming into intrigue. "Come in," he said, his voice warm but authoritative. Ethan stepped inside, heart pounding against his ribcage. The instant he crossed that threshold, he felt like stepping onto a stage. All eyes turned to him, a mixture of curiosity and scrutiny weaving through the air. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he introduced himself, the conviction in his voice growing. Daniel leaned forward, his expression shifting to one of genuine interest. Invigorated by the invitation, Ethan began to explain. He outlined strategies that focused on storytelling, tapping into the emotions behind consumer behaviors. "People don't just buy products, they buy narratives. If we frame our brand story in a way that resonates, it could create deep connections with our audience," he explained, feeling the enthusiasm bubble up inside him. As he spoke, he noticed Daniel nodding, the room falling silent but charged with attention. This was it. He felt the energy of possibility growing. His demeanor shifted. He wasn't just a candidate now, he was a contributor. Minutes turned into what felt like a lifetime, but Ethan lost himself in the flow, finally revealing the plans he had kept tucked away. He proposed collaborative campaigns that involved real-time consumer engagement, incorporating social media and user-generated content. When he finished, the room sat in a pregnant pause, hanging on his words. Daniel leaned back in his chair, visibly impressed. "That's a strong pitch, Ethan." Ethan took a breath, and in that moment of clarity, he understood what worked best for him. "Because I thrive on interaction and collaboration. I believe that the best ideas emerge when diverse perspectives come together." Daniel's expression shifted to one of approval, and Ethan felt a rush of triumph. That's the kind of attitude we look for here. He then turned to the other executives in the room, exchanging knowing glances that only served to strengthen Ethan's resolve. Just then, Laura stepped into the office, her expression shifting from surprise to curiosity as she took in the scene before her. In that moment, she caught Ethan's eye, and something in her demeanor transformed. She asked, a hint of intrigue in her voice. "Ethan here is sharing some innovative ideas for our marketing strategy," Daniel explained, gesturing toward Ethan with a clear sense of pride. Laura's eyebrows shot up and a smile blossomed across her face. "Well, color me impressed," she said, her tone now genuine, the earlier dismissal fading away. Ethan felt a swell of satisfaction. He had come full circle from being ignored in the lobby to standing in an executive office, engaged in meaningful conversation. It felt surreal, almost like a dream he had worked tirelessly to manifest. As he exited the office, footsteps light with exhilaration, he realized that he had pushed through the barriers of doubt and fear. He had fought for his moment, turned rejection into opportunity, and rewritten the narrative of his day. In the vibrant lobby crowded with ambitious faces, Ethan felt renewed. The experience reminded him that sometimes life doesn't offer opportunities on silver platters. Sometimes you have to reach out, knock on a door, and demand your place at the table. And as he walked out into the bustling city beyond, he looked back at the building, a beacon of potential. He felt ready for whatever came next, no longer hidden in the shadows, but stepping boldly into his future. Opportunities weren't just given, they were earned, chased, and forged through courage and resilience, and he would make his mark one step at a time. Ethan stood just outside the entrance of Riverstone Corporation, his heart racing like a high-speed train. This was it, the moment he had worked tirelessly for his big interview for a marketing position at one of the most respected companies in the industry. The glass facade of the building shimmered in the morning light, reflecting the hopes and ambitions of those who dared to step inside. He took a deep breath, adjusting his tie, a small gesture to give him the semblance of control. The lobby was alive, bustling with professionals, each one dressed sharply, exuding confidence. It felt like entering a different world, a realm where dreams met opportunity. But among the sea of faces, one stood out, Laura, the VP of Marketing. She walked through the lobby like a queen, a commanding presence that turned heads. Ethan's pulse quickened. He admired her from afar, having followed her work and esteemed accomplishments. This was his chance to connect, maybe even impress her with his enthusiasm. Taking a steadying breath, he approached, his determination masking his trepidation. "Excuse me," he said, trying to catch her attention as she moved. She turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes for a brief flicker. "Yes," she replied, her smile warm but her focus unmistakably elsewhere. With that, she turned and walked away, her phone immediately glued to her ear. Ethan felt the air rush out of his lungs. He was left standing there, the words he had so carefully rehearsed now stumbling in his mind. Ignored, that single moment felt heavy, a weight that pressed down on him. His mind raced with doubt. Was he wasting his time? Maybe he didn't belong here. Fighting against the current of disappointment, he steeled himself for the interview ahead. He had come too far to back down now. He squared his shoulders and entered the conference room where 3 interviewers awaited him. The stark, bright lighting above felt almost harsh against his skin as he took a seat. He could feel the eyes of the panel piercing into him, each gaze a reminder that his future rested on this moment. "Welcome, Ethan," one of them said, a slightly forced smile on his face. With a deep breath, Ethan began. He spoke with fervor about his love for marketing and creativity, losing himself in the rhythm of his words. For a moment, he felt energized, as if he were dancing between concepts and ideas. But then, like a shadow creeping across a sunlit stage, doubt pulled him back. What did it matter if he dazzled them? Laura's dismissal echoed in the back of his mind, a reminder that even the most brilliant ideas could fall flat if the right audience wasn't there to receive them. As the interview progressed, the questions became more targeted, probing deeper into his strategies and thought processes. The panelists listened actively, but Ethan felt a creeping anxiety as the clock ticked loudly in his mind. He felt as though he was treading water, trying to stay afloat while the weight of self-doubt threatened to drag him under. Then came the moment he hoped for, the opportunity to show genuine curiosity. One of the interviewers asked, looking genuinely interested. Ethan swallowed hard, grasping at the chance. But just as he posed the question, a shift in the atmosphere startled him. The door swung open and in walked Daniel, the CEO. The energy in the room turned electric and all eyes turned to him. Daniel was a commanding presence, an adept capable of drawing attention and invoking respect. His stride was purposeful, each step concrete. "Good to see you all," he asked, directing his gaze at Ethan. Ethan felt small under the scrutiny of the CEO's eyes. "I'm Ethan," he stammered, trying to maintain composure. Daniel seemed intrigued. In that moment, Ethan felt the world shrink. The room around him fell silent, the weighty expectation nearly suffocating. "I believe storytelling is the key to wound emotions and create bonds with audiences," he managed to convey, drawing on his passion. "Interesting," Daniel replied, tilting his head slightly as he listened, eager yet cautious. But just as quickly, Daniel turned back to the interviewers, leaving Ethan to feel like a forgotten thread in a complex tapestry. His heart sank. He had stepped into the lion's den, but now he felt like prey, slipping away into the shadows. The interview wrapped up soon after, but any spark of hope fizzled out. As he walked out, Ethan felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. He had prepared well, yet that nagging doubt remained. What had he accomplished? He watched from the hallway as others hustled by, their paths illuminated by clarity and purpose. He lingered for a moment, contemplating leaving, but then something caught his eye, the staircase that led to Daniel's office. For a fleeting moment, a thought ignited within him. What if he went upstairs? What if he could turn that moment of rejection into a chance to stand out? Fear mixed with excitement surged through him. This wasn't just a whim, this was a necessary risk. The throne room of opportunity awaited him through those glass doors. With determination, he forged ahead. Each step felt heavier, yet it also infused him with purpose. As he reached the top, the glass doors loomed before him, and they felt like the gates to a new world. Ethan peeked into the office. Daniel was present, surrounded by executives, their attention tethered tightly to the conversation at hand. He could feel the pulsing energy inside, a place of dreams and decisions, innovations and inspiration. With trembling hands, he knocked gently on the glass. The sound ricocheted in the silence of the room. Daniel turned, surprise flitting across his features, and then motioned for him to enter. "Come in," he said, his voice warm yet authoritative. Ethan stepped into the office, a feeling of both exhilaration and vulnerability flooding him. He could feel the eyes of the executives on him, assessing and curious. "Hi, I'm Ethan," he introduced himself, his heart racing. Daniel leaned forward in his chair, clearly intrigued. Invigorated by the invitation, Ethan launched into his pitch, his words flowing endlessly. He spoke of connecting narratives with audiences, how emotional storytelling could create brand loyalty that transcended simple transactions. He illustrated how they could engage consumers through interactive campaigns on social media, inviting them into the world that Riverstone was crafting. As he spoke, Daniel shifted his focus, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. The atmosphere crackled with tension and possibility. For a moment, it felt like they were inside a creative whirlwind, and Ethan was at the center, spinning tales that could turn into reality. But then, as he detailed his final point about leveraging user-generated content, he noticed the executives exchanging glances. Doubt began to creep in again. Had he gone too far? Was he stepping outside of his bounds? Daniel raised an eyebrow, a flicker of skepticism crossing his face. "That's a bold approach, Ethan," he said slowly. Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. This was the question he had anticipated. "Because I believe in collaboration," he replied, finding clarity beneath the whirlwind of emotions. "By bringing diverse perspectives together, we can birth ideas that resonate." Daniel leaned back, considering the weight of Ethan's words. The room felt charged, a tension that could break or it could solidify something remarkable. Just then, Laura stepped into the office, her expression shifting from surprise to a mix of awe and admiration. She asked, a hint of curiosity laced in her voice. "Ethan has been sharing some ideas worth exploring," Daniel replied, glancing between Laura and Ethan. Their eyes connected, and for the first time it felt like a bridge had been built between them. For an instant, the dismissal from earlier seemed to evaporate, replaced by a new understanding. Laura's lips curled into a genuine smile. "Impressive, Ethan," she said, her tone warm and sincere. It felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. With a mix of anticipation and fear, Ethan watched as Daniel turned back, an amused glint in his eye. "You know, we could use a fresh perspective around here." Ethan felt the excitement bolting through him, the prospect of working together coming alive. In that moment, it felt as if everything had shifted. He was no longer invisible. He was stepping into a realm of possibility. Then Daniel's phone buzzed sharply on the table, cutting through the charged atmosphere. He glanced at it quickly, then looked back at Ethan, almost apologetically. "Unfortunately, I have a meeting to get to," Daniel stated, the weight of authority returning. "But I want you to come back and pitch these ideas in a formal setting." Ethan nodded, a mix of hope and trepidation welling up inside him. "I would love to," he replied, feeling the warmth of possibility radiating through him. With that, Daniel stood, and the moment shifted, the energy that had fueled their conversation dissipating. The executives began to shuffle, preparing for the next agenda item. As he turned to leave, Ethan felt a wave of elation and another wave of uncertainty. The path forward felt clearer but still daunting. Would he be able to impress them again? What if he faltered when the moment arose? But just as he reached the door, he heard Laura call out to him. "Ethan," she said, her tone different than before, "don't forget, part of being successful is knowing how to handle rejection." Her words struck deep, burrowing into his mind with undeniable clarity. He turned back to her, nodding. "I'll remember that," he promised. As he walked out of the office, a whirlwind of emotions coursed through him: anticipation, hope, and an edge of fear. He had stepped out boldly, not letting a moment's dismissal define him. Yet as he made his way down the hallway, holding tightly to the spark ignited within him, he paused to glance back. A shadow moved through the glass, and he caught a glimpse of Daniel's profile, determination etched across his face. In that moment, Ethan realized something crucial. He was just at the beginning of a climb, one that would test him beyond his expectations. The door had been opened, yes, but the journey ahead would demand every ounce of courage, creativity, and resilience he possessed. And as he exited the building, the cool breeze brushing against his skin, he couldn't shake the thrill of the unknown that lay ahead. With every step, he felt a growing sense of purpose. What awaited him next? Would he be able to rise to the occasion? Would he accomplish his dreams? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the fight had only just begun.